Welcome to our third special Euro 24 edition of Moments That Could Have Changed Football Forever. I'm joined again by my fellow author, Peter Prickett, by our special Spanish international coach correspondent, Kevin Graham, and ex-Royal signaller and top coach from Doncaster, Tony Mee. Guys, we were so close, weren't we? Obviously, we're going to talk about the game, but what if that header had gone in? Or headers, shall we say, at the end? What do we think? England going on to win it, or still getting beat?
You just don't know, do you? I mean, who knows? Someone was saying to me yesterday, somebody who doesn't know football, but they were in Spain watching the game, and they said, "We're going to lose, aren't we?" I don't know. It's a final. It's 50-50. You don't have to be the best team to win. So who knows? But if it does go in, it probably papers over a lot of cracks, which is where we're going. We've been going all tournament, and I think now that we haven't won it, I think we're all free to speak completely openly about the performances and how content we should be with a record of getting close, and whether it's arrogant to say or think that we should have been doing better. That's probably where this conversation ends up.
If we come back to that moment though, that it goes in terms of the match and the way the match was sitting. So they've gone in front. We've scored a belter to equalise. They scored so near the end, and everyone thinks they've won it. That header goes in. What I was thinking of, is does that? It sort of, to me, it gave Spain that they're not going to budge. I thought it'd have been a huge psychological impact on Spain, that goal, if it had gone in. Would you say, Tom? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that as much as we probably didn't deserve it, there would have been a massive momentum shift because pretty much like you just alluded to there, they've scored late on, early and late in the half. Scoring that late, if that had been us that had gone 2-1 up, we would have been absolutely over the moon. And had they equalised, we would have hit rock bottom. And I've got a feeling, which will never be tested, that would have happened. That we would have gained a little bit of momentum. That did he actually end up putting those two subs on that he was about to make? If those two subs that were on the sidelines had then come on, we would have had another couple of pairs of fresh legs to take it into probably another 30 minutes. But it's the classic, of the premise behind your book, what if, and we can all rewrite a different ending now. I mean, when I was on holiday, and I'm not blowing smoke here, when I was on holiday and I was reading the book a few weeks ago, I just kept thinking, right, so they've written it this way, but I would have written it that way, or I might write it that way. So we can all write we would all like to write an alternative ending potentially to last night, but the reality is there in black and white. There were a couple of really good chances with headers in the dying embers of a game. But what if?
Yeah. Did you think that was the big? To me, that was the biggest XG, that one, Kev.
So that sequence for that corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you take the three shots we had on target there, the three shots we had, two of which were on target, take those stats out the game, it paints probably a more realistic view of actually what the game represented and how the game played out. I actually think I'm going to disagree with Tony. Or not, it's not disagree. It's just I see it a different way. That Gallagher and Trippier were stripped when with England at 1-1, having got back in the game. So I think therein lies your answer. Spain, it goes to 2-2, and England then try to kill the game. They try to strangle the life out of the game and play for penalties. And Spain proved that they had the antidote to that because they created chances, they kept the ball, and I don't think England would have been able to drag Spain into a dogfight. I genuinely felt like their composure, their flow, they had to defend not for very much, maybe 5-10 minutes of pressure in that second half. But that aside, I feel like if that goal goes in, they just go back, but they revert to type. They continue to play their football, and England probably sits deeper. So it's more about the fact that Southgate and Holland choose not to go and press, maybe not to bring on Eze, for example, instead of Shaw, rather than Trippier, bring Eze on there and stretch Spain. That's not the mindset, clearly, unfortunately, frustratingly, as we keep alluding to.
It was funny, wasn't it? Because I think when the team that was on when we scored, that's the team I'd have picked. The way and even the way he got set up, because it was like 1-4-1 at the front, wasn't it? You got Rice, and then you got actually Bellingham was in the right position. He got Cole Palmer alongside him. He got Saka and Foden wide, and Ollie down the middle. And you're going, right, here we go. Yeah, here we go.
It looked good, didn't it? But you know what? I genuinely feel there were instructions from the sideline or some kind of consensus around the group that if we get back in this or we go ahead or whatever, we then reset.
Yeah.
Not we're going to put a foot on the gas and we're going to go hell for leather and we've got them and this is our opportunity. The door is ajar. Let's storm through it. I genuinely feel that Southgate many times through the tournament actually made a conscious effort to control proceedings, to control the mindset of the group, to say, well done. Now let's slow the game down. Let's get control. Let's make sure we don't do anything silly. And that mindset, that's where a lot of our frustration lies. That's a big assumption on my part. But when you put 2 and 2 together, that's what I'm getting.
There was a brilliant moment. I watched it in our club, and it was, the great and the good in the club, absolutely packed. But there was a wonderful moment that I just think summed up the English football fans' mentality. And it was the loudest cheer apart from the goal. And it came after about 10 minutes, if you remember, when Stones did that brilliant tackle, slid in, and the whole place stood up and went, yes, come on. And it was a great tackle, but you still know that the England mentality is that the big tackle is still a thing in it.
But from a coach's perspective, I was the same. I was absolutely the same. Yeah. That's not to say that it's the bulldog spirit. You watched him. You watched his body shape. You watched where he was taking him. It was just a textbook, superb execution of 1v1 defending in a critical part of the pitch. Yeah. Which, to be honest, John Stones is as good as anyone in the world at. And I have to say, I thought he was very, very solid throughout the tournament.
Yeah. Tone, I've noticed on social media you've been talking about Kyle Walker.
Yeah, I have. He'd be great in a sprint against Usain Bolt. But I think Bolt had beat him down the left wing most times. He was out of position again for both goals. Whether you're playing as a right-sided centre-back or whether you're playing as a right-back, if the ball's on the opposite side of the pitch, you've got to patrol that back post area. And there's too many times that for me when we've conceded goals in that area. And I know the ball's got to come from somewhere else, but you've got to do your job. You really got to do your job, and I don't think he has.
The first goal particularly, we're talking about he's in the team for his speed. I felt that his primary concern was to sprint as fast as he could to get back, but he didn't really pay any attention to where he was getting back to, because he sprinted really, really close to his centre-back and didn't really cover off that space, and he just kept sprinting in. He didn't get the brakes on into a position where he could actually affect what was behind him. Whether he'd seen what was behind him or not is another question. But particularly for that first goal, it was like, well, I'm just going to be as quick as I can. I'm going to get in here and I've done my job, but I haven't done my job because I've not had a look around me and I've not actually picked up a good position.
I think criticism of Kyle Walker for the goals is harsh. Personally, I think the general criticism, I largely agree with Tony. I find myself nodding along. That goal, Danny Olmo makes a run from midfield straight into the 18-yard box in a central area, and Kyle Walker can only do one thing, because Kobe Mainu hasn't done his job. He hasn't tracked Olmo in from a deep area, and so what does a right-sided defender do there? Doesn't stay out wide. He's got to go in and track that, because that's where the most danger is. The thing was, they were so fluid in their passing and the movement of the ball across the pitch that as he was coming in, they transferred the ball out there to Nico Williams, and I don't think he did a great deal wrong. If you watch it again, just my view of it.
Yeah,
but it was the run from the central area that wasn't tracked that I felt was the problem.
One of the things I think that I looked at on the back of what Tony was saying, because you go, oh, go on, let's have a look at that, and it sort of took me back to when I first started coaching, and I guess it's the way I'm thinking that all of us start. It's the two banks of four. You start coaching and everyone coaches 4-4-2, and the first thing you get is like the distances between your fullback and your winger. When you're out of possession. Those two banks of four. And I've watched it back, and Saka isn't in the picture for any of the goals. And particularly for the second one, Cucurella runs right past him. Saka never moves. He runs right past him. I had a look on the first one. Walker's position on the first one is Danny Olmo. He takes the position off Danny Olmo. And then the ball goes out wide, and he has to try and reset then, and they're all over the place. Yeah. But I'm sort of 50-50 with you. I think what Pete said in the first place is when he's under pressure, say when he's running back, his positional awareness is not brilliant. It's not. He's looking left, right, and all over the place, and often his speed gets him out of it. But the second goal in particular, which I thought was you got to hold your hands up. It was a great goal and a great finish, wasn't it? It was probably the best moment of quality in the final. That for me, it was. I wanted to clap. I'd have got killed in the club, but I wanted to clap.
I did. I said straight away, what an excellent goal. I mean, Cucurella's first time delivery into that area. Yeah. I mean, we how many times did England do that throughout the whole tournament?
Right. I thought it was interesting with you, Kev, as well. How do you pronounce it? Are we saying Kobe or Kobe? I think it would be
Kobe, I think, but I don't know.
But it was like the game passed him by, Pete. Did you not? He was never near anywhere. He was never near the ball. He was never near his man. To me, it sort of went past him the whole game. He just looked lost in that one.
I think it's tough. I mean, we are because on the back of that very, very good performance against the Dutch, suddenly everyone expects him to perform as well again. I mean, that's tough on any player, I think, but particularly tough on a 19-year-old in central midfield as well. Central midfield is so tough to play consistently, because if you make a comparison with Yamal, he doesn't have to be consistent for everyone to get out of their seat. He needs to have one or two moments and go, oh, look at the great game he's had. Well, has he? He's just had one or two moments. The difference being that because of the position he plays in, those one or two moments can be the difference between winning and losing. Whereas with the central midfielders, to try and produce everything consistently to a high level, it's tough. I mean, the two Spanish central midfielders did it through the whole tournament. Yeah. And that's why Ruiz and Rodri are in the conversations for player of the tournament. Or Rodri will probably touch on in a minute about him coming off. But yeah, he obviously, Mainu was not as good as he was in the previous game. But it's a massive expectation on him to be anywhere near that game after game after game.
Just experience, I think, as much as anything, wasn't it? Interestingly, on the last podcast, I said if it was me, I'd stick Bellingham on Rodri. And they stuck Foden on Rodri, didn't they, first half? And to me, it pretty much worked that. He wasn't as... What was really interesting, I thought, as well, was because Foden was on Rodri, he had Laporte carrying the ball out. Didn't you? Do you see that? Laporte kept carrying the ball past Rodri and almost like trying to do that role, which I thought was really interesting, Tony. Was that something you picked up on?
I didn't, to be honest with you, but just thinking about the Mainu situation in comparison to the two Spanish central midfield players, I agree that he wasn't as much at the races last night, but how much of that is also down to his central midfield partner?
Oh, yes,
£100 million worth of price, who's had a pretty woeful tournament, to be honest. You would expect the senior partner in there, if he was having a bit of a tough time, to be able to sort of G him up and maybe cover for one or two shortcomings. And I don't think that happened. I'm 100% in agreement that it wasn't Mainu's greatest game. But at the same time, there's a few more worthy candidates for criticism, if I'm honest.
There was a moment that I really remember where they were trying to bring it out, and Bellingham was in the second half, bottom left-hand corner, and Bellingham does really well. He does a trick. He has his body strength. He does a trick. He does a step over. He moves it, holds onto the ball, brilliant. Knocks it back to Rice, who's now stood on his own near the corner flag. He just lumped it straight back to them. And my heart sank. It was like, oh no. He was way below, I thought, Rice. He was last night, and he wasn't great throughout it, I'd say.
I think also the change in formation back to 4-2-3-1, that's a significant part of this discussion, because if you get Bellingham and Foden closer together and you give Mainu the opportunity to go and link up and join into those two, they've got short passing angles, and they've got a number of. Whereas the amount of times Mainu, the one pass that he wanted wasn't there for him, and Spain are very, very good at getting their body between the ball and where you want to go with the ball. And the amount of times he had to, they basically just cut off passing lines, and he had to go backwards. And he cut a frustrated figure when he came off the pitch. And I think we were yet again outcoached to some extent, as well as outplayed. You know, these are team failings and individual failings. And you know, I agree with what Tony said. I genuinely feel Declan Rice has had a very poor tournament. I almost feel like the area of the pitch that the goal came from should be his domain. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Can now. You just went a little bit, but can now.
Yeah. Something went with the earpods, whatever they're called. That should be Declan Rice's domain there, and in the same way that it is Rodri's and was Fabian's to some extent. I don't think we ever really got control, and the amount of times throughout the course of the tournament, I think Rice hasn't wanted the ball. That must be soul destroying for the centre halves when you've got a £100 million footballer in front of you who doesn't want the ball, and he's literally locked onto one of their players and he's making no. And I know sometimes that's about taking someone out and creating space to maybe drive forward and run with the ball as a centre half. But a lot of the time, I just think it's a reflection of Declan Rice simply doesn't want to circulate the ball there and be given that challenge.
Just while we're powering on Rice,
we are. But I'm gonna continue.
Go on.
Just generally out of possession, I think he's been pretty good generally, except in transitions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we're set and in a block, he's been pretty good at marshalling, snuffing out danger, blocking off angles in there. But in transition, he's either stepped up and got impressed. We saw that moment when the Dutch broke away, or he's not tracked into the right zone and it's left a big hole in front of the defence. In possession, him in possession has been a big problem. And I think if you look at all of our opponents, we've not really been pressed aggressively until the final. And the Spanish pressing has been excellent all tournament.
Yeah.
And if you're going to try and play through the press, which we seem to attempt to for an hour, you need everyone to be on it in possession to be able to do that. And we were not. And then this links to the Harry Kane situation.
Oh, it does.
Because if you can't play through the press, as we all at a basic level know, well, you're going to play over it and in behind, but you can't do that if you haven't got a player who can run in behind. And boy, did he look! I actually had sympathy for him last night with Harry Kane. Boy, did he look injured. He looked like an injured player.
Yeah, he did.
I've got no sympathy for anyone on this, genuinely anyone, because as I say, he was no worse last night than he was in games years and years and years ago. This has been a problem that, like I say, some kind of unagi kind of I don't know deception is stopping the world, the media, and particularly the commentators who are friendly commentators with the England team, on calling out Harry Kane for what it truly is, which is zero contribution to the team. And I'll give you an example, because I like to give you an example of Harry Kane on each of these podcasts. Last night, as Pete says, we couldn't play through the press. The press was superbly organised. We didn't have that guile, that ability maybe to drop the shoulder or to send or just to create that little bit of space ourselves. We did what we always do, which was back, sideways, came out to Luke Shaw, who did have a little bit of space, and Carvajal was pressed quite high, and there was quite a distance between the centre halves and Carvajal. Where was Harry Kane? Between the two centre halves, going nowhere. What would have happened if you'd have had a centre half worth his salt at under 16s level, let alone at elite European Championships level? He'd have run off the shoulder and into that area, and he'd have been able to play the ball into feet, and we could have got out, we could have moved their press, and we could have created space. And these are basic functions of someone playing in that role. Harry Kane failed on time and time again, not just in this tournament, but in previous tournaments.
It was like we were playing with 10. I genuinely felt we were playing with 10 last night.
The quickest he moved was when he ran off to the pitch, off to the side of the pitch when he was getting subbed.
But I felt it was, you talk about their press, but our press with, he did nothing. And if they've got a free, I talked earlier about Laporte bringing it out. Once you've seen him do it twice, it's like, oh, you know what, I might try and stop that, or it's just anything. The other thing that you don't know, right? So he's not fit, but just win us a header here and there. So we're going long with Pickford. Just win us a header. Just
he
one.
He did win one in the first 5 minutes. I thought that's more than he's done the whole bloody tournament.
It's like, or a free kick. It was just really hard. Difficult with Harry for certain. What I think it'd be good to talk about is the impact. So what if England had won? Do we think the impact on our game, on the English game, is going to be any different if they had won than if they didn't?
No.
And I mean, grassroots down upwards, let's call it.
Not for me, because for all the talk about the DNA and how good it's been, and I believe it has. I believe, but I only believe it has been good at certain levels. I think that academy level, having worked in academies for 20 years, I think academies have really picked up on the England DNA stuff, and some grassroots coaches, quite possible. But for me, now that I'm not working in the academy game and I'm coaching in the JPL, I don't see it. I don't see any England DNA strands. I didn't see any England DNA strands in the England team about controlling possession, about getting on the front foot. When Dan Michichi came in with the age group squads, this attack with 6 and defend with 6, I don't see any of that. And I think that potentially, if we'd won last night, it might have had a detrimental effect because more teams might want to play low blocks, sit back, and try and counter, whether they've got the players to do that or not, because it kind of becomes a trend, it becomes a thing. Oh, we won the Euros playing a low block and counter attacks.
What do you think, Pete? Big picture.
Participation wise, I think it could have had an impact. Purely because I think about a couple of things. I think about how even let's take a club level, right? So a club being promoted from the Championship to the Premier League, you see a massive uptake in the people who are interested in attending their sessions from a community trust point of view. And that's just promotion from the Championship to the Premier League. We see 1990 people suddenly becoming interested in football when they weren't before. 1996 people suddenly becoming interested in football when they weren't before. And we've had a little bit of that with Southgate's first runs of success. We saw some increases there. And I think if we had gone that extra step and won a major tournament, you would have seen more people suddenly interested that weren't before. And I remember reading in 2000, it wouldn't have been in 2003, but a couple of years later, it was just after England had won the Rugby World Cup. And the RFU said that they were not prepared.
Yeah, that's right.
For the additional uptake. They just didn't expect it.
Yeah.
So I think that even though we sit in the game and we think, it's popular. How much more popular can it be? Well, actually, it can be even more popular at a grassroots and participation level.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That with the women, you saw that with women and girls. When they won the Euros, there was a huge bit. Now, obviously, boys has got a longer tradition, but I agree with Pete. I think it'd have been a good shot in the arm at grassroots level. And everyone buying England kits and wandering in to training, the first ever training session in an England kit instead of a United kit or a Liverpool kit. Would have been good to see. I think.
I'm not sure that boys football isn't already at saturation point. If I'm honest, I don't think that how many more boys are really gonna play just because we'd won the Euros playing like absolute dog.
Yeah, I think that's the question. Yeah, I know we've got a lot.
How many kids care about how well the team, but the nuances of the quality of performance. How many kids are bothered about that? They would more be bothered about the winning, the scoring, the celebrations, the scenes, all that sort of energy. I think that energy goes a long way.
Agreed. That's what I see over here. I mean, the culture is get football out, however old you are. It just is there. It's still so far ahead of other sports. It's still, the minority sports have really closed the gap in England in the last 30 years, whereas in Spain, if they've closed the gap, it's to nowhere near the same extent. What it provides here, winning for Spain winning the Euros, is the opportunity for communities to come together, for families to make memories, for this whole area to feel uplifted. And another chance to celebrate. And by the way, the Spanish really don't need much of an excuse to celebrate. But there are parties, almost every day of the week this time of year. So this is just another party, to tell you the truth. But that feeling of community, that feeling of identity with your country, I think maybe politically, sometimes that's used as a tool. But you don't see the impact, to Tony's point, because the saturation, it's here already. I don't think Club Deportivo Rincon are going to have an increase in their attendance or their registration process pre-season. I think it'll be the same people who turn up. but they might all have just an extra T-shirt in their bag, or they might have had a couple of extra parties in the summer.
It's the monkey off the back for me as well. You know, it is, isn't it? You know, the narrative still is, oh, same old, we're rubbish. And we're not. We're making, you know, marginal gains, aren't we? You know,
do you think we're making
quarterfinals to semi-finals to finals?
Do you think
It just would have been great, wouldn't it? It just would have been great.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree with you. But to your point there, do you actually think we're making marginal gains? Because I actually feel like we're on the way down. I feel, you know, I put something out there today to say that without a doubt in my mind, Italy in 2021 was the chance for Gareth Southgate.
Yeah.
Was the chance for this generation. And I actually think we're on the way down now. And we're going to have to rebuild a little bit after this, more than just continue the momentum that's been created, because that momentum is slowly fizzling out. It's slowly being challenged. It's slowly being subject to derision, to be perfectly honest, from a lot of people within the community.
What if the Munich air crash had never happened?
What if Michael Owen had stayed fit?
What if Ajax never sold?
These are just some of the things discussed in a brand new book, Moments That Could Have Changed Football Forever. Every what-if moment in the book has been chosen to spark debate. Buy your copy now, online at Amazon or Waterstones.
I think that's the next topic, isn't it? You know, what would you do, Tony? Are you know, building the team? Are we getting rid of the over 30s?
Yeah, I'm not sure I entirely agree with Kev in terms of us being on the way down, because I actually think that we've got a crop of players that can continue to improve. I do think that we've definitely plateaued. I wouldn't say that we're starting to come down the other side. The fact that we've made the final again, regardless of the style of play or what people might think about how easy the path was, there's still only ever two teams that can get to the final. I think that there's a crop of good players waiting to be allowed to play in a different style, one that's a bit more go forward, get on the front foot. We still, as a nation, need to learn how to keep the ball better, but still progress it rather than keep the ball for keeping the ball's sake. So I think that if Gareth does decide to leave, and I suspect he will, the next appointment will be an interesting one. You look at some of the names getting bandied about, and I think that they might be a little bit same old, same old.
Do you go for Tom? You know, you're head of the FA. Who you appointing?
I mean, I genuinely looked at some of the people that are. Klopp's not got a job at the minute. No, yeah. You know, Graham Potter, Eddie Howe. I think, to me, they're a little bit much of a muchness. I am genuinely at a loss to say that I would like to see Joe Bloggs as the next England manager.
I really be English, Tom. Think he should be English.
I don't care.
Not bothered.
No, I don't. As long as the players are English, I'll settle for that.
Do you think he should be English, Pete?
I don't know. I'd take some of the Spanish players. Or I'd take a Norwegian Englishman, but let's not go for that one, because it does say Leeds on his
born in Leeds.
Birth, Erling. It's hard with the coaching. Like, Kevin is in Spain. How many people in Spain thought De La Fuente was going to be the coach?
Not a huge amount, and he's got so many critics. You know, even probably still after yesterday. But he's as I've said before, he's got a lot of critics. So yeah, it's a good point.
It's the same thing, Del Bosque, right? So Vicente Del Bosque, everyone criticised him at Real Madrid. Of course, he's going to win titles. Look at the players. He went, no one won any titles. Del Bosque came into Spain. He wins two tournaments. Completely underrated, came in, got a group of players together. People didn't seem to rate him. De La Fuente has just won the tournament seemingly from nowhere. So I don't know where the England coach is going to come from.
Do you know what I thought it might be? I thought it might have been Steve Cooper, which is a bit left field, but he's part of the system. He won the World Cup with Foden's lot. He knows what is required. I thought he might have been quite good, but
yeah, he'd be a De La Fuente equivalent.
Yeah. Well, in a way, Southgate was sort of because
Yeah.
he came through those ranks, just had other experiences beforehand. There may be a wider question that we probably shouldn't go into here about coach education and the pro or the A and pro licenses in England, because it does seem that we're not really producing top level managers. Now, there's something obviously to be said about what opportunities are given to English managers. There's another conversation to be had there. But if the English managers were that good, then people wouldn't ignore them. They'd be giving them the job. So there may be a wider conversation there that maybe so much effort has gone into helping to try and improve the youth coaching that maybe we've neglected the other end of the scale.
Of all the names mentioned so far, the one that I think Potter and the way he approaches it, it might just suit him, international management. Whereas, we mentioned Jurgen. I don't think international management would suit Jurgen. Whereas what you've read about Potter and what he was coaching Iceland, I think, wasn't he, or wherever it was, when he earned his reputation, and all the sort of social side of it that he gets and the psychological side of it that he gets. I think it might suit him, and he'd be my pick if Gareth goes tomorrow.
So here's my theory, right? We're never going to get a run of luck in terms of draws and the stars aligning as we've had in the last 2-3 tournaments. I just don't think that'll ever happen again. I mean, if who am I to say that? Who knows? But it's unlikely. So that's the first thing to consider. And if a Southgate managed England team had come up against Germany or Spain or Portugal in the last 16 or quarterfinals of some of these tournaments, I think we all know how that would have ended. Highly likely, right? And that puts a completely different spin on things. And Pete, to your point there about Potter, I love Graham Potter. If I was a chairman of a football club, I would want Graham Potter on a 4-year contract to build the culture of that football club and link that with performance on the pitch. But I feel like the England DNA and the need to have the kind of manager and person who you'd want to bring home to marry your daughter
perfect
is not getting the best out of managing a group of individuals who are big time. And when I say big time, I mean big time.
Yeah.
Kane, Bellingham, Foden, just use those 3 as examples, right? I feel like they need to be brought into a team environment with a different mindset to what we're seeing in terms of the way that they portray themselves. And listen, I think Jude Bellingham is an incredibly impressive young man. His interview last night after he'd thrown his toys out of the pram was really, really good, because he said, we're going to have to deliver. Like, we've got the team, we've got players, we can do this, and we know we are going to have to deliver, and I respect that and like that. But what I'm getting to here is, I want Jude Bellingham to be used for the good of the team, not down on the team sheet and then work out where we're going from there. And I feel that has happened far too much. And it's all about trying to create this environment that's agreeable. And this is quite controversial, but I want to see a Sam Allardyce kind of character. I'm not saying the style of football. I'm saying someone who absolutely leaves everyone's egos at the door, leaves their reputations at the door, and make sure that whoever enters that dressing room understands that you have got 19 or 24 or whatever it is individuals in this team, and any one of you could be starting in that first 11, and any one of you could be sat on the bench and might not play the next 3 games. And this is about the good of this team. And the word team, Spain versus England last night, goodness me, what a stark reminder of how important team concepts are in this sport last night.
So
and I don't think we get that by trying to accommodate
Sorry,
for that.
So the one name that immediately comes to mind based on what you said, and it won't be him, and I hope it isn't because we get the same football, is Jose Mourinho.
Yeah.
Talk about throwing the egos out of the door. Jose is the ego. No one is going to have a bigger ego than him. You're doing what Jose says, but the football would be really similar. I think it would be really quite similar, especially at this stage. So I'm going to chuck 2 names out there. One is currently employed in international football, but I think he's had 2 different jobs, and he knows the English culture quite well, and it would be a different style, and that's Roberto Martinez. We would get that different style of play. Yes, the record's not particularly proven per se, but he knows English football inside out. He's coached 2 different national teams, cross cultures. He could be a decent option, and one who is probably not going anywhere for a little while, but he's flirted with international football and is a master of dealing with big personalities, would be Carlo Ancelotti. Because said he's flirted with international football before. There was that little suggestion of the Brazil job. It might be too soon right now because he doesn't look like he's going anywhere. But then there's that talk about maybe Xabi Alonso decided not to say yes to Bayern and not to say yes to Liverpool because actually he's got his eyes on Real Madrid. And could it be heading towards the time when Carlo decides, I don't want to be doing it every day, but I do want to be showing my
good shout out, Carlo.
Experience. And of course, he had a very good time on the pitch in England. He didn't have such a good time with Roman, but that's not relevant to this.
Yeah, I'd take Ancelotti in a heartbeat. But again, having read his book, it comes across as having all those human and cultural qualities that Kev's mentioned, that Gareth's got, but he's also got that little bit of something extra when it comes to tactics and reputation. I'd love to see that.
Presence.
I think what is great about everything that we've just said, we sort of we did cover it in the book with what if Brian Clough managed England, wouldn't he? He'd be perfect for it now, Cloughie, wouldn't he? Leave all your egos at the door.
But don't you think he would have been a little bit like the Mourinho situation? Nobody's ego's bigger than the manager's.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the challenge here is right. You look to Capello's reign. That's where the players seem to be the least happy.
Yeah.
And when I say a Sam Allardyce type character, just as an example, and by the way, Ancelotti's a significantly better example, and you can see how excited I am at the prospect of that. I'm talking about a modern version of someone. So a modern version of Clough in terms of that intelligence of when to put your authority down, when to demonstrate just how important this team is, the concept of this team, this country, this over an individual's desire to get their agent's wishes or whatever it is. It's a different animal now to create this kind of old school authority that I think is needed with this team, and it's also about the confidence, because I just don't feel Gareth Southgate's had the confidence to go outside his box. I really don't.
I was hoping that if we won it, if we won yesterday, that it'd allow him to do that and perhaps allow us to move on to a more fluid football style as well. They'd have the confidence of, we won one, let's go and try and win one playing nice stuff. That's what I was really hoping. My biggest fear for Gareth is that I just thought, I think I mentioned it last time, but Foden, Bellingham, Trent, Saka, they play at a higher level than international football. And I, from the body language at times, you're just wondering whether they thought it, that what they were being asked to do was I'm not saying beneath them, but they're used to playing a more sophisticated system, and I don't know.
And any manager will know the feeling when a player doesn't completely buy into what they want.
Mm.
And we've seen it time and time again in these last few weeks. We've seen players walking away, Bellingham exasperated with the lack of movement from Kane, for example, or what he's been asked to do. And we've seen there's numerous, the amount of times that Rice, like I say, has kind of shrunk a little bit. And I just feel like Southgate did an incredible job of managing to salvage those moments. And the other thing I would say is, it's not going to surprise me if something major, a big story, comes out of the camp.
Yeah. So
I think there's some scandal in there in the run up to this, in the early days of this tournament.
It's that fitness thing, though, Pete. I think, innit? That has to be the big thing. I would have thought.
I think that might be what comes out of the camp, is how many players have been injured, how many players probably shouldn't be starting games or playing games because they're not at the fitness level required, and how Southgate either made the decision to trust those players because they're the players who've done it before, or said to the players, I've got to play someone else, and they've just gone, no, you're not. And he's gone, you're right, I'm not. I'm going to play you. Something along those lines is
well, there's a hint at it with Tony, wasn't there? There was that hint with Tony when he did that interview and he said he was angry at not playing more. Now, there's a difference between, accepting, Harry Kane scoring 2 every match. You go, I'd love to play, but there we go. If Harry Kane's playing like he has and he's not fit and still getting picked, that'd make you cross, wouldn't it, Tone, I think?
Yeah, you'd be right to be furious about it. So it'll say a lot now about some of the players if anything like that does come out, because if one of them wants to go to the press now, write off the rest of their international career by saying XYZ went on in camp, then I don't know what that does say about the culture that's being created. I'm not sure it'll happen. It might come out in a slightly different way.
It's how it comes out, innit? I can't imagine someone blowing their career. Yeah.
No.
Well,
I can't see that.
Kyle Walker's 34. Probably hasn't got much left in him internationally.
No, that's his last one.
He's my candidate. He's the whistle.
Yeah. And the problem is, it's not usually the players themselves; it's their network of people.
Yeah,
their network of people. That's the risk, and even in this day and age, it's hard to control that. So I would definitely be. I definitely think something's happened because Southgate has alluded to there's been things gone on, and and I'm surprised he's mentioned that. And again, that I might be. I might be looking into it too much and reading too much into it, but I feel like he's setting up to step down, and I as I said the other day, I genuinely hope he does, because I think it's time, and he needs a break. I think 8 years is a long time, but I do think all of this is heading towards the truth. Is going to come out a little bit more. We'll start to understand a bit more about why the performances were as bad.
Kyle's also got a relatively young podcast, which might need some additional.
We'll know what that feels like.
Again, makes him a candidate. Yeah,
I would. I'd sell him in a heartbeat for City. I would. We might get some money for him. I find the interesting thing, we've all touched on it, but building the next one, we're going to have a bit of a clear out. Quite evident, I think, that Palmer somewhere has to be in there from the way that he's played in that tournament, and that goal he scored last night was a zinger, wasn't it?
The midfield, the oldest player in the midfield is Declan Rice at 25. The actual set of central midfielders up there. Everyone else is much younger. And then if you take Harry Kane out of the forward line, I think the next oldest is 28. So there is, these players have still got a tournament or two in there. I mean, Harry's still 30. He's probably got another 1 or 2 in him if we really wanted to go down that road. Although I say that, I think Alan Shearer called time at 29 or 30. So there's always the player's choice.
But the thing about international football is it rolls on, doesn't it? You know, they'll be qualifying for World Cup in a fortnight, won't they? You know, it's not, oh, well, that's the end of that. Whoever comes in next will be going, it's a big call to tell Harry he's not playing, isn't it? It is.
But my view, and I'm like I say, I'm coming up with some kind of, I wouldn't say revolutionary stuff here, but stuff I genuinely feel it needs a hard reset. And the reason it needs a hard reset is because England teams have had square pegs in round holes for too long. It's not good enough. That is not good enough. There's a certain player profile and balance of profiles that you need in the squad to be able to generate a cohesive team unit. And I have not really seen that for an awful long time. And we can go back as far as you want, really. A long, long way. Now, is that because of the profiles or because of the managers? I think it's because the managers are too weak to say, this is the way we're going to play, and these profiles fit, and these two are just on the outside of the circle. Tough. Yeah. And that's the decision, in my opinion, for the good of the whole team, the whole country, that I think we need a manager to be strong enough to make, and we need the FA to support them, we need their staff to support them, and they need to be good enough, intelligent communicators to get the players on board with that and accept that there might be a little bit of collateral damage, because that happens in every walk of life. Yeah. To get the best for everyone.
I think you could have put that team in any colours and we'd have all sat there and gone, oh, that's Spain. Just from the way they played, you'd have gone, oh, that's Spain. And that for me is what the DNA should be doing. The England DNA, you should put our team in any kit and go, oh, that's England.
Well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. Sorry, Pete. I need to speak here. I don't agree with that. It's a really important one. We might have to have a fourth podcast on this, Pete. The DNA has done an unbelievable job of having this thread through the age groups with the right foundation of technical fundamentals and creating ball-orientated footballers. That's why we've got all these fantastic attacking players now. But youth football allows you to generate that without risk, without consequences on results. When you get to first team level, I don't think it needs to look anything like anything else in English football if it's successful. If they are the best team in the world and you get the best of all of the constituent parts that you've developed through this process, which requires fundamental techniques being developed in the right environment, world-class coaches, the Pete Sturgises of this world, are the fundamentals to creating your Phil Fodens. Let's have more of them. But let's make sure that we also have more Luke Shaws. And let's also make sure that we have more, more centre forwards like Ollie Watkins, who can actually run in behind, who do have the skills to not just come short and play number 10 like so many young players want to do. So I think the DNA is up to results-based football. And I don't subscribe to this. I don't, on reflection, I agreed with it at the time. I now disagree with it completely because I feel like we've tried to take some parts of that idea and we've done a really bad job of it.
Well, Sean Dyche was questioned, wasn't he, quite a while ago because he was supportive of the DNA or similar, but was asked, "Well, you're not going to play this way. You don't play in a way that fits with the DNA." And he said, "My job is to get the best possible results out of this team, playing whatever is appropriate at the time. Yep. But those kids need to be ready for what's to come. I'm probably not going to be here when they're ready to play for the first team." And that's the difference. But what I was going to say, and this goes back to something Tony was talking about, Dan Machichi 666. I mentioned it in my Principles of Playbook. I actually think that as simple as it was, and I think that's the beauty of it, is how simple it was, is as close as we've had to a thread of actual playing style going through the England age groups. And I think that you could transfer that to the England first team and still play different styles to fit your group of players, but still have that same set of principles or key or core principles.
I don't know enough about it to comment on that really, Pete, but it would have to reflect the here and now of how we're going to win a trophy the next time this comes around with the players that we've got. And if it does, then great. But if it doesn't, because the players couldn't play to those principles or for some reason it didn't make sense, I'd end up disagreeing with that statement. I'd have to, do you know what I mean? I'd have to understand a bit more about it.
Tony, you mentioned it earlier. Maybe you pick up on it.
I mean, I haven't got the full readings of it at the minute, but I know that it was that every time we attack, there should be at least 6 players involved in the attack high up the pitch. When we're defending, we should have at least 6 players behind the ball. I'm not quite sure how it translated to the midfield. I'd need to read it all again. It was some time ago that I read it. I think it was when he was at MK Dons.
So yeah, he started it back. So it was, can we cross the halfway line within 6 passes?
Okay, yeah.
Can we attack with a minimum of 6 players? Can we regain possession within 6 seconds? So you've got your counter pressing, you've got playing forward. Can you get forward? And can you get attack with a certain number of players? Very, very simplistic, and something that could fit a number of different situations.
Yeah, that's not for me. Just my personal preference. If you put a bit of a straitjacket and said you've got 6 seconds to do this, or you need to do this it's that kind of artificial element to it. I think the players need to be able to go out there and have all of the capability, because of the development program they've been on, to be able to make decisions and read the game and take that feel of the game in there, rather than put structures or key fundamental principles in their head that they have to stick to. It just feels too restrictive to me.
Yeah, I think
players making decisions is the trick, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that may be oversimplifying it a little bit, because we're trying to put it all out there in sort of a 10-second gap. Yeah. But if you remember, and this was a big thing when I started in academy football, the 6-second thing came from Barcelona. Can you win the ball back in 6 seconds? If you can't win it back in 6 seconds, then you don't keep chasing it. You just drop back into a structure behind the ball until you create a situation where you can go and win it in 6 seconds by forcing a turnover, forcing a bad pass, forcing a mistake, but not dropping off to your own 18-yard line with 10 players, which is pretty much what we have been doing for the last 4 weeks.
So I know Kev's got to dive off very soon because he's got a meeting with the Pope. Just to bring this one to an end, do you think you will see England win a trophy before you're as old as me, Tony?
I'm nearly as old as you now, so that ain't, no. I mean,
that's why I started with you, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I did put a tweet out last night saying, and it had been running around in my head for 15 or 20 minutes, that I don't believe that I will see an England team lift a trophy in what is left of my lifetime. I hope I do, obviously, and I hope I live to be 1,000 years old, but one of those things is definitely.
Imagine living to 1,000 years old and they still haven't done
it. 1,060 years of hurt. Yeah. They'll still be trotting that record out.
Yeah, Pete. Do you think you'll see us win it before you're as old as me?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I think we have got, based on the talent that we have and the talent that is still emerging, and all of the this may be where it trips up a little bit because things are changing. All of the great work that has gone on in the last decade that I hope continues, and the changes that I believe are afoot that will be even more for the better, the players will, and the talent of the players will not be the issue. The issue will be what's happening on the pitch and what they're being asked and instructed to do. But I do believe that we have and will have players of the ability to bring a major trophy back home.
So, Kev, you're only a baby. We've got loads of years before you're as old as me. You must be optimistic. I know you thought we might have a bit coming into a dip, but you think we're going to win something?
I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure. And I'll tell you the reason why I'm not sure. I think Pete made some really good points there. And I agree the talent will be there. The money is in the Premier League, the media focus, that there will be people who will literally say, I will find a way for English football to become dominant and put the resources behind it because of the monster that's been created with the Premier League. However, culturally, the pressure that England's players are under, there are similar pressures for other countries, but it is not the same. It is absolutely not the same. And I think the pressure, the combination of the media, the success of the Premier League, and maybe British history and the British mentality, I think those things are barriers to this happening. Now, that's quite a big statement to make, and it's quite it's very difficult to prove. It's a very subjective opinion. But if you think about the other countries that are out there that we're going to continually have to beat at the drop of a ball in the 90th minute in big games, Spain, Germany, they're not going anywhere. Portugal will come again. France will come again. Holland will come again. The chances, you're talking about, a very, very small window of opportunity. And then you pile all of the things that I've just said there, particularly the pressure that's on that group of players and that's created by the machine. And I think that's a big challenge.
And on that thought-provoking statement from Kev, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you all on the podcast again. Brilliant today. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Guys.
Enjoyed it, gents.
What if the Munich air crash had never happened?
What if Michael Owen had stayed fit?
What if Ajax never sold?
These are just some of the things discussed in a brand new book, Moments that could have changed football forever. Every football fan has a what-if moment that they know would have brought their team glory if things had turned out differently. Every what-if moment in the book has been chosen to spark debate amongst football fans. Buy your copy now online at Amazon or Waterstones and let us know what's your favourite what-if moment in football history.